Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. Then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes to learn about the evolution of the industry over time, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you're ready. But we're going to start with some news from Tom Engel, as he reports the MORE Act, which would federally legalize cannabis, just got 7 new co-sponsors ahead of its Wednesday Judiciary Committee vote, including its first GOP supporter in this Congress. And although this GOP supporter might not have the best reputation, from my understanding they're mostly allegations, and I try to stick to the innocent until proven guilty, but it shows that he signed on to and vetoed for the bill last Congress, so that's one less GOP senator that we have to try to get on board, because he probably just understands that freeing the plant does a lot more good than harm. So just wanted to relay that, but apparently this whole session is supposed to start at 10 a.m. today. Not sure when the vote starts, but I will update that on Sunday and relay anything that comes on that episode. Mind you, if you want some real-time information, I am on Twitter at Make More Capital, so you can follow me here, and I'll share any information on what we end up getting today. But that's it for the Judiciary House Committee. On to this article from Bloomberg, just relaying what I mentioned last weekend about SAFE and the options going forward. As pot firms bags of cash may soon be history, which would be a great thing, but companies still want fixes for tax deductions and stock listings. So I just want to relay this, as this is from Bloomberg. So it's another bigger, credible source, sort of relaying what I was talking about last week. But since the largest cannabis companies have figured out ways to get around operating in cash only, SAFE would mostly help smaller businesses and new entrants to the market, says Safriya Galoob, Chief Executive Officer of the Liaison Group, a Washington-based lobbying firm for the cannabis industry. Galoob, who is also Executive Director of the National Cannabis Roundtable, has been working on SAFE since 2016, and she admits that it's far from perfect. SAFE banking is an important step toward the comprehensive reform that the industry deserves, but it doesn't do everything we want and everything we need. Even if it gets implemented, she said, larger institutions may continue to shy away from the industry. Loans will be feasible, but it will be a bank-by-bank decision, she said. And while the bill would boost lending opportunities, it wouldn't do as much as full legalization would, she added. But just to relay that SAFE obviously helps the smaller players, and this emphasizes the social equity applicants that would be getting into the space. This is why it's better that some form of it passes sooner than later. But this is from BTIG analyst Camila Lyon, and a lot of what I relayed in the last episode, but has speculated that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer could exclude the bill from the National Defense Authorization Act in order to create momentum for broader legalization legislation that has been championing his new Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act. While that would create more uncertainty on timing, it could mean SAFE gets expanded to cover taxes, public listings, and include provisions to help minorities join the cannabis industry, Lyon wrote on September 2022 research. So again, this is speculation, but I just want to relay that the options that I mentioned are sort of being relayed by Bloomberg. So this is what we can consider going forward. Lyon wrote about the possibility that SAFE could pass in the Senate in November or early December in its current form. That's possible. Probably a 50-50 chance, while SAFE Plus could take longer, perhaps next March and April, but that would be SAFE plus some of the other good things that we're looking for. So that's really where we sit today, despite the House Judiciary vote that's going to also happen today. If that goes well, that would just be even more beneficial for the industry. Even if a longer timeline could mean a more broad-based SAFE Act, Galoob said it would do more good for the industry to have a simpler version of that act sooner. And this is the main thing. It would be better for the industry to just get SAFE now and have Schumer and his team use their energy to work on some more comprehensive in in 2022, but adding more provisions to it now will be a lift beyond what is politically viable at the moment. Having actual change in the short term will be more beneficial to the trajectory of the industry. So just wanted to relay that, as it covers what I sort of covered last week. I always like to try and deliver this information before the big headlines because that makes me feel good. But regardless, this is in line with what we have seen before. And as we await today's vote in the House Judiciary Committee, if that comes out positive, that would just be more momentum added on top of this. And hopefully we can see this going forward with SAFE staying in the NDAA. On to this one from Todd Harrison, Jeffries on U.S. Cannabis. Fair usage prevents me from sharing more, but that bit at the end is worth a passing glance. So this is from Owen at Jeffries. Given the above likely scenarios, it could be easy to be downbeat. We think the opposite. One, it shows the momentum really building for reform, such that we think something will have to happen sooner rather than later. To this, we now have a total of 4 cannabis legislative movements happening in Congress. SAFE attached to the NDAA, standalone SAFE sitting in the Senate committee, passed the House in May, the MORE Act going to the House committee today for that vote, and then the Schumer bill soon to be submitted. 2, the reason that SAFE is not in the Senate Senate NDAA version and will unlikely survive final committee. And the reason more won't make it to a Senate vote is the Senate Majority Leader wants to prioritize his own Schumer bill. Talk about ego, right? Well, we prefer this. First, it shows he is fully committed to getting something done around cannabis. His reputation might be in tatters if he blocks others and then didn't do something himself. Second, while his initial and far-reaching bill will likely fail, he will then likely fall back on something that can work. Critically, from an investment perspective, this will likely include capital markets protection. As explained in detail last week, the route to CMP, capital markets protection, under SAFE is unclear, while for more, although it would lead to CMP, it is in its current form and without any support from the majority leader, also most likely to fail. But just to highlight from the bottom, expect to see some institutions invest ahead of any legislation. While we may have to wait until at least second quarter of next year for a workable Schumer bill to pass, we think that once we get visibility that something will pass, some institutions will be and I ended up finding this snippet actually from Jeremy Brooks. So thank you, Todd, for sharing this. But on to Jeremy. Jeffries says some institutions, we're just going to cut right to this, expect to see some institutions invest ahead of any legislation. While we may have to wait until at least second quarter next year for a workable Schumer bill to pass, we think that once we get visibility that something will pass, some institutions will be, a bit of a typo there, willing to invest ahead of it actually happening, adding it would not take many to drive a material move upwards. So that's a very positive development. And then just a note on this comment down here, I wouldn't bet or invest on federal legalization passing this Congress, and possibly not post midterms either. Yeah, we're not betting on cannabis legalization. It's incremental reform, step by step. And I think if you're watching this paying attention, then you know that, but most people that are not aware of all the workings and how complex this is going and all of the moving parts likely think we need legalization for these companies to benefit. And that's where, someone who's just not as informed might not know that. Again, I don't know what Adam J. Smith knows, but just to highlight that we're not betting on legalization. It's the incremental reform that will help us get there at some point in the future. On to this news from states, though. Hundreds gather for conference on New Jersey's cannabis industry as state prepares for legal sales. With New Jersey preparing to begin selling cannabis to the public within months, hundreds of cannabis industry professionals gathered to talk state regulations. And that sounds good, within months. New business licenses and how the continued federal prohibition of cannabis affects the Garden State's new marketplace. Now, I just wanted to scroll down because the main takeaway from here is that the state's Cannabis Regulatory Commission last month released its initial rules to guide the cannabis industry, but it missed a deadline this month to begin accepting new licenses or new applications for licenses. While the commission has also come under fire for taking months to award medical marijuana licenses entrepreneurs applied for 2 years ago. Diana Huanu, chair of commission, said that the group continues to work as quickly as possible to score the applications during a keynote address she delivered. She said 99% of applications to cultivate cannabis has been scored, and the other processing and selling cannabis applications are about 75% complete. So, acknowledging the delay, she has also touted the speed with which the commission turned around its regulations. They had just 6 months from the day Governor Phil Murphy signed the legalization law to set up a new state commission and draft the rules. A lot of people didn't think we could pull it off. Some people even bet money against us, she said. I know it feels like it takes forever, but we're really on a fast track to get adult use applications ready to go. So coming from the person who's actually head of the commission, although a lot of people think it's not going to get done, she's pretty optimistic that they're going to get it done sooner than later, and a little bit of delay isn't reason for worry. So just wanted to share that, as it seems like New Jersey is getting ready for everything they need to get going. And again, sooner than later, I will update you with any news of when this is expected to launch. On to New York, as New York governor says marijuana legalization will create thousands of jobs into regulatory appointments. So you got to love this new governor coming in and really filling what Andrew Cuomo didn't do at all. The governor of New York says cannabis legalization will generate thousands and thousands of jobs in the state, which is 100% true, and she's touting her recent actions to make regulatory appointments for the industry to get implementation underway. The Business Council of New York State annual meeting on Friday, Governor Kathy Hochul talked about the state's business ethic and the importance of supporting markets of all sizes, including cannabis companies. And although we love the new governor making appointments and talking a big game, I think the most important thing is that we want to know when New York will go online. And obviously we don't know that yet, but just to add some color to this, in July, a New York senator filed a bill to create a provisional marijuana licensing category so that farmers could begin cultivating and selling cannabis ahead of the formal rollout of the adult use program. The bill has been referred to the Senate Rules Committee, but because the implementation process has been drawn out, however, one GOP senator wants to give local jurisdictions another year to decide whether they'll opt out of allowing cannabis businesses to operate in their area, a proposal that advocates say is unnecessary and would create undue complications for the industry. Under the law, as enacted, municipalities must determine whether they will opt out of permitting cannabis retailers or social consumption sites by December 31st, 2021. Senator George Borrello introduced legislation earlier this year that would push that deadline back 1 year. And although he's introduced this, little reason to think that this is actually going to get passed because they have plenty of time to get this done by the end of this year already. So just wanted to share that. Legalization activists aren't buying the argument. Adding pressure to get the market up and running is the fact that regulators in neighboring New Jersey, as we've just seen, recently released rules for its adult use program. And according to the commissioners we've just seen, they do plan to get the ball rolling with the application process sooner than later, which is being implemented after voters approved a legalization referendum last year. So it seems like a lot of what New York, their timeline relies on New Jersey getting up and going sooner than later. And it seems like from the commissioner that they are planning to do that. They might be a little bit behind, but there's no reason to doubt that there's going to be any big delays. So as long as New Jersey can get online, that's going to push New York to get online sooner than later. And the main thing is we've just got a governor that actually sees the benefits of this as opposed to old Cuomo. So we'd love to see that. While we move over to Pennsylvania, lawmakers unveil cannabis legalization bill with focus on social equity. And in the past, the biggest issue with Pennsylvania, from my understanding, was a red Senate. And I don't think that's changed any recently, but let's just see what this has to say. A bill to legalize cannabis in Pennsylvania was formally introduced on Tuesday, and sponsors emphasize that the plan is to enact a policy change that prioritizes social equity for communities most harmed by the war on drugs. Reps Jake Wheatley and Dan Franco rolled out the legislation at a press conference. This comes months after the two circulated a co-sponsorship memo urging colleagues to get on board with cannabis reform. We think we have the industry standard, Wheatley said at a press conference with supporters, and that just goes to say, you've heard me over and over again, year after year, talking about the important issues, the economic question, the question of access and opportunity, most importantly, social and criminal justice reform aspects, which is 100% true, and why all states should be looking at this very seriously. But the introduction of HB 2050, I don't know why I said that so weirdly, comes out of a bipartisan Senate duo, is also in the process of crafting separate legislation to legalize cannabis across the Commonwealth. Sens Sharif Street and Dan Laughlin announced some details in the proposal earlier this year, but this bill has yet to be formally introduced. So just wanted to share this as Pennsylvania seems to be working on reform, which is better than them not working on reform. And as Pennsylvania has a very robust medical market, they do not have a legal recreational adult use market yet, but this would change that. So hopefully they can continue with that. On to this news as DC sets first ever hearing on bill to legalize recreational cannabis sales, something that voters in DC voted on in 2014. So this is good news, just a short, brief development, but more than a dozen states across the U.S. have already legalized cannabis sales, and later this fall, lawmakers in DC will start debating whether to join that group, as they should because of what the citizens of DC voted for. The DC Council has scheduled a public hearing on November 19th to consider legislation from Chairman Phil Mendelson that would legalize the sale of recreational cannabis, alongside a separate measure from Mayor Muriel Bowser that would make a number of significant changes to the existing medical cannabis program. So just going to report on this for now, but this is good news that they're actually starting to get this rolling in DC, as that's sort of been up in the air since 2014. While an IRS official offers tax advice to cannabis businesses and says the feds expect industry to keep growing. And I want to highlight this here because if the Fed previously perceived this as an illegitimate business, although it's not, it's completely legitimate, legal business providing jobs and tax revenue like any other industry, but if the feds perceived it as illegitimate, the main thing that they want to do now is start perceiving it as legitimate, which would involve them bringing their cash into banks and having them pay their taxes electronically. So I think this is very positive, as if they anticipate it growing, some change has to happen. So we're going to find out what they're talking about. In a blog post on Monday, IRS's DeLon Harris said that the evolving and complex issue my organization has been focused on is the tax implications for the rapidly growing cannabis and marijuana industry. And the official, who serves as the commissioner for the IRS's Small Business Self-Employed Examination Division, recognized that the status quo means that cannabis businesses are forced to operate on a largely cash-only basis, and federal prohibition also means that companies in the sector are precluded to taking any tax deductions. However, while the tax statute known as 280E means the industry is ineligible for most federal tax deductions and credit, he noted that cannabis firms can deduct their cost of goods sold, which is basically the cost of their inventory. Which isn't deductible are their normal overhead expenses, such as advertising expenses, wages and salaries, and travel expenses, to name a few, Harris said. I understand this nuance can be a challenge for some business owners, and I also realize small businesses don't always have a lot of resources available to them. So the official preview from the Cannabis Marijuana Initiative the agency is launching that will provide specific job training to tax officials to effectively carry out audits within the industry, ensure that there's consistency in the IRS's policy for cannabis, work with stakeholders to ensure tax compliance, and help to identify non-compliant businesses. So this is good news, and although obviously we know about 280E and we want this removed sooner than later, and it will just help the companies that we're invested in keep more profit, I think the main takeaway just to highlight from this is this is just yet another signal that while cannabis remains federally illegal, agencies are increasingly recognizing that a policy shift is happening in states and may well be on the horizon at the congressional level. So again, that just sounds like foreshadowing, but wanted to share this as a lot of organizations seem to be anticipating some sort of change. And that's likely the reason why we should be as well. On to this news from Germany. So I don't know a whole lot about this, but I wanted to share some new developments. And if anyone happens to be German, any viewers, please let me know if you know any more on this topic. But Germany would-be kingsmaker sees legal cannabis, but little else with SPD Greens alliance. And I think this is referring, I'll just read the article. But so legalizing cannabis is about the only thing that Germany's Free Democratic Party could easily agree with the center-left Social Democrats and Greens. The FDP leader, he said, sounding cool on the possibility of forming a so-called traffic light coalition. Now, Christian Lindner wants his business-friendly FDP to be the kingsmaker after Germany's national election on Sunday, at which the future course of Europe's largest economy is at stake after 16 years of steady center-right leadership under Angela Merkel. So this sounds like they're talking about the Freedom Democrats, but and then there's also the center-left Social Democrats and Greens. Now, the thing is, the election ended up happening on the 26th, and German elections' final results showed defeat for Merkel's CDU as the center-left party wins. Social Democratic edge ahead after neck-and-neck exit polls, taking 25.9% of the votes. So, from my understanding then, that basically just means that a different party has taken over, and the odds of cannabis becoming legal in Germany are now higher. Now, I have not been able to follow this whole development closely, as it's just not something in my ballpark. So I do ask if you know anything about this, please let me know. But it seems like the Social Democrats have won, so cannabis legalization could be something that might come about in the near future. And so just on top of that, that makes this news more interesting, and that's why I just want to share this. AMP becomes exclusive marketing partner of TLRY for a free medical cannabis brand in Germany. So AMP announces that it has been appointed as the sole marketing partner for all Aphria branded products imported or cultivated in Germany. Afria's medical cannabis brand of TLRY, global pioneer in cannabis research, cultivation, production, distribution. And I own shares in TLRY, so for me this is a positive development, as it could mean more opening up for Germany, not only medical-wise, but also potentially for adult use in the future. Now, the new cooperation of AMP with TLRY as their sole marketing partner in Germany for the Aphria brand is based on a supply and marketing agreement with CC Pharma GmbH, a wholly owned subsidiary of TLRY. The conclusion of this agreement is a milestone for AMP in providing a complete catalog of medical cannabis products for doctors to subscribe to their patients. AMP's catalog of Aphria and other medical cannabis products are available through TLRY's nationwide pharmaceutical distribution network covering 13,000 pharmacies across Germany, in addition to AMP's other supply partnerships with pharmacies and distributors. Now, just to add this last thing, doctors are becoming increasingly familiar with the Aphria medical cannabis brand, as it is the only German cultivated medical cannabis flower currently available for patients due to TLRY's commitment to supply Germany with the highest quality domestically cultivated and imported medical cannabis products from German patients, said Dr. Stefan Fauerstein, president and director of AMP. TLRY has entrusted AMP as its sole marketing partner for the Aphria medical cannabis brand due to our commitment to training to develop a knowledgeable sales team covering major cities, but also small towns and rural regions, ensuring that all German patients have access to this medicine as it becomes more commonly prescribed by doctors. And so I see this as a big win for TLRY and also for Germany and how they're going about this and trying to bridge that gap and using education more importantly than anything else to connect patients with doctors who can prescribe them medical cannabis. But yeah, just wanted to highlight this while we go to another Canadian LP. Aurora Cannabis announces their fiscal 2021 fourth quarter results. Now, I'm not going to go through this, but we're just going to take a look at the numbers and show year-over-year comparisons. And this is just a company that fundamentally is not healthy and that I would never want to invest in. Although I've owned Aurora in the past and I made some money by investing in them. If we look at their Q2 2020 sales numbers, they sold $35.2 million worth of consumer cannabis, so to the adult use market. In Q4 of 2021, that fell to $19.5 million. So their sales dropped by 45%. Don't know exactly how they lost their market share here, and because of that, they've clearly shifted their focus to medical cannabis, which likely isn't as profitable. So it's not going to offset all these big losses that they're seeing, their total revenue losses and cannabis net revenue. But just to highlight, these are not healthy fundamentals. But despite that, Aurora trades on a U.S. major exchange because cannabis is federally legal in Canada, and therefore they went up, I think, 6% yesterday. But this is likely people investing, hoping for a bounce up, not really understanding what they're investing in, because in the long run, these are not healthy numbers. So just wanted to show that because it does contrast how over time we've seen a few LPs improve their numbers, but some have not. And sadly, there's always going to be winners and losers when there's a new industry, and Aurora is turning out to be so far one of the bigger losers, because they just don't have that big backing that Canopy has. On to some mainstream media outlets actually covering cannabis in a positive light. This one is ABC News first, highlighting cannabis use did not climb following legalization in states, study finds. And I've relayed this study many times. Recreational pot has become legal for more Americans, but despite that, ease of access cannabis use hasn't ignited. Cannabis use hasn't spontaneously burst into flames. Like, use proper English. A study released Monday found cannabis use hasn't risen. An article published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that there was no increase in cannabis use among the general public or among previous users after states legalized cannabis. So that study is there if you want to check it out, but great to see ABC News highlighting this, as this is positive news. On to this one from Brookings.edu, just highlighting that Biden should end America's longest war, the war on drugs. 100%. I'm not going to go through this all. You can grab the links below if you want, but more positive sentiment towards cannabis. We've got another one from Forbes. Now, I just wanted to share this snippet with you, but then we're going to get to the top. Where there's smoke, projected highs for America's 5 largest cannabis markets. As of right now, the top 5 markets: California, size of $4.6 billion, Colorado, $2.1 billion, Washington, $1.4 billion, Florida, $1.2 billion, Oregon, $1 billion. And note, Florida is not even an adult use market yet. It's just medical. Top 5 markets 2025, California, $7.1 billion, New York, $3.8 billion, Illinois, $2.8 billion, Florida, $2.7 billion, and Colorado, $2.5 billion. So this is not that far away. 2025 will be less than 3 years at the end of this year. And, if we can get these markets online and looking this good by then, this is an industry, I want to be invested in. That's why my money's in. But just wanted to show you that, as I found this was an interesting snippet. But this is another full scale feature from Forbes highlighting the making of New York's $150 million cannabis campus, as Ben Kovler Green Thumb Industries is expanding its $5.7 billion empire in the Empire State with a lavish new grow facility to compete in the booming marijuana market. And again, highlighting that they're using an old prison to now fund cannabis cultivation. So it's just how the tables have turned. It's very ironic and funny, but again, highlights that this brings more positive change than any sort of negative change. And then lastly, changing America. America is changing. Cannabis tells the story. And this is The Hill featuring this. Nowhere is cannabis promise greater, or the change it could forge as impact than in social equity, criminal justice, job creation, economic development. I've been saying that for a year now. So get with it, Biden, Booker, and Schumer. You have the biggest win the Dems have seen in decades sitting in front of you on a silver platter, and all you have to do is something now rather than nothing. And that will free up the energy to do something next year that will create more positive change and potentially earn back the respect of your voters so that you can get in power again for another 2 years. Are you going to do the right thing, or are you going to gamble it all away, Schumer? On to this one from marijuana arrests fell precipitously nationwide in 2020. According to the FBI's Uniform Crime Report, police made an estimated 350,150 arrests for cannabis-related violations in 2020. This total is calculated by multiplying the total percentage of cannabis arrests by region with the total number of estimated drug abuse violations. This total is a 36% decrease from 2019 totals, when police made an estimated 545,602 marijuana-related arrests. Not since the early 90s has the FBI reported so few cannabis-related arrests in a single year. So this is a huge victory for America and the American people, as more states move towards the sensible policy of legalizing and regulating cannabis, as we are seeing a decline in the arrests of nonviolent cannabis consumers nationwide now. So this is how you right the wrongs of the war on drugs. This is how you give Americans their life back. So this is great news, and I love to report on this kind of stuff. There's another one from LA County DA to dismiss 60,000 past cannabis convictions. The nation's largest prosecutor's office is moving to dismiss roughly 60,000 cannabis convictions, the latest step to undo what some reform advocates consider the damage caused by narcotics enforcement carried out before Californians voted to legalize cannabis, Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon announced Monday. Under previous District Attorney Jackie Lacey, the office moved last year to dump 66,000 cannabis convictions that took place before voters passed Proposition 64, the state law legalizing recreational cannabis use, but that list was compiled using information collected by the California Department of Justice, and Gascon said his office was able to identify tens of thousands more eligible cases by combing LA County's court records. Dismissing these convictions means the possibility of a better future to thousands of disenfranchised people who are receiving this long-needed relief, Gascon said in a statement. It clears the path for them to find jobs, housing, and other services that previously were denied to them because of unjust cannabis laws. So we gotta love this, because this is real restorative justice, and the more we can cover stories like this from across the nation, the better. And then lastly, just wanted to share this from Natalie Fertig on Politico, as there was a big demonstration on Capitol Hill yesterday in support of legalizing cannabis. So just to highlight that again, if you want to join this fight fight, you can, by writing a letter to your state reps telling them why you support safe banking and why you think incremental reform is the best step as opposed to full-scale legalization, or by taking part in these demonstrations, or just by spreading the awareness. Whichever way that you can do to help get this awareness out there, it definitely helps with this incremental effort. And often it goes a lot further than you would think. So that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully the vote today goes well, and I'll have some good news to recap on Sunday. But I want to thank you so much for tuning in and really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think about the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or concerns, as I'd be happy to address them. Besides that, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos. And of course, for real-time updates, you can follow me on Twitter as well at Make More Capital. But that is it for today's episode, folks. So have a great week, and I will see you on Sunday.